Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Arianne Larimer, Vice President at PureSpectrum. I joined PureSpectrum in 2016, and I've been working with Dr. Reid and Sentient Decision Science since then. We're really excited to share some original research with you today. Dr. Aaron Reid is founder and CEO of Sentient Decision Science. Dr. Reid is a psychologist, author, and entrepreneur who builds technology that quantifies the human emotional experience. A published expert in how emotion influences choice, Dr. Reid's mathematical models of human decision-making are the new standard for forecasting the success of product launches, ad virality, and marketing communication impact.
Thank you.
PureSpectrum is headquartered in Westlake Village, California, and we have offices across the US, in London, Singapore, and Australia. So why are we here today? PureSpectrum provides an automated online sample to Sentient that enables them to automate the scientific research process and scale emotional measurement. This has a huge impact on understanding how people really feel, rather than just what they say or self-report. Our partnership is key for Sentient because our ability to automate sample delivery provides a foundation for them to rapidly test implicit emotions across representative groups of respondents. We support the Sentient Prime product that we'll discuss today, as well as the Rapid Subtext tool, which they use to test the subconscious impact of Super Bowl ads overnight in order to share data the day after the Super Bowl. The impact is that in hours and days, not weeks, they can test the emotional impact, the emotional appeal of a brand, powering critical decisions to be made quickly and efficiently. The full scope of the PureSpectrum solution varies from an automated do-it-yourself global sampling platform to full field management services, data processing, and an insights platform. What we found is that while every client relationship is unique, quality and simplicity are the two main drivers that customers consistently seek when working with PureSpectrum. The PureSpectrum Sentient partnership is based off of speed of delivery of high-quality respondents that they can trust when sharing their research. While Sentient focuses on the data science, we focus on making sure that they have representative and high-quality respondents. When we think about representativeness and data quality, there are two main factors that we solve for. First, our sample marketplace includes diverse panel sources that provide access to a wide range of respondents so that surveys are not completed by a single behavioral type that could bias data sets. And second, our PureScore algorithm is the first of its kind to automatically block fraud and inconsistent respondent behavior. It's a machine learning algorithm that learns over time, so continues to improve quality with every survey completed in our platform. Ensuring representativeness in our sample is a primary part of what we deliver to Sentient. Imagine only surveying individuals in this room, or only surveying individuals who attend an NFL game. Even when matching on demographics, you're likely to end up with some skew of behavioral characteristics if you limit data collection to a single panel. By multi-sourcing from diverse and differentiated panel sources, we provide a broad set of respondents that can still be balanced to census to ensure representativeness and diversity in your data. And perhaps the most important part is trusting that the respondents who complete each survey are who they say they are. PureScore's predictive quality rating system uses over 18 billion data points a year. The model works by finding patterns among behavior, including screening consistency, completion rate, and group behavior based on demography. This is the work we do so that companies like Sentient can be confident in understanding the emotion of a generation. Now I'll hand it over to Dr. Reid to talk more about Sentient's mission and the scope of the research we'll share with you today.
Thank you, Arianne. I might want to emphasize a couple more points here on this. You're good. You covered them. We just didn't do the advanced.
Sorry about that.
The foundation for what you're going to see today is all built into that tool. We know as researchers that the central limit theorem allows us to project out to broader populations. But the question is, what are you actually projecting out? Are you projecting out what people say? We do that all the time in this industry, right? Are we projecting out to the broader population how they truly feel? Not always. And so if we want to be able to make these studies representative of the human emotional state, we need to have quality sample, and we need it to be representative of our populations. And so I can't emphasize enough how important the work is that you're doing at PureSpectrum, and thank you for this partnership. It's really amazing. Arianne mentioned that we can turn this overnight. That's the new market research. It's not simply polling. It's automated behavioral science. So let me introduce you to Sentient. Sentient is on a mission to increase empathy for the human condition. You heard that we build emotion detection technology that measures how people truly feel by measuring their implicit associations, as well as the emotion that they express in their face and in their bodies. And we're also able to measure the cognitive antecedents of those emotions. So what you have with those two pieces of information are the essential ingredients for empathy. You know how people feel, and you know why. And empathy happens. You don't have to work at it. If you have those two pieces of information, you're empathetic. We believe we can increase empathy for the human condition by putting this technology in the hands of corporations, of governments, and of individuals to inform the world how people feel and why they feel that way. So I want to start with a story. It was February 2nd, 2020. Let's go back to that moment in time. I was in Miami watching the Super Bowl with my dad in his apartment, and when I got there, he asked me, "Have you been watching the news lately, Aaron? What do you think about this coronavirus thing over in China?" I was like, "I haven't heard about it." That was February 2nd, 2020. We sat down on the couch and started watching the Super Bowl, and I think we were just enjoying having the time together. You know, like when I was a child, we used to watch football together, and it was just the two of us on the couch. I had my favorite dip, French onion dip from Hell of a Good with Ruffles potato chips out. I was dipping. My dad had made chili. That's our Super Bowl meal, Ruffles and chili. And we were watching the Super Bowl. As Arianne said, we were testing all of the ads in the Super Bowl, and so I was really keen to see the ads, see how they played during the game, and also sort of see my father's response. This was from Google. Google was launching this ad just around the Super Bowl. It was Loretta. I don't know if you remember this, but it's a story of a man who is using Google to help him remember his life with his wife, who is now passed. And it's a really emotional ad. And we were watching it. It's about 1:30 in length, I think, and we were sitting there. After the ad was over, my dad stood up. He walked out to the kitchen, and he said, "I hate it when they play with your emotions." And you know, I'd come into it. I've been talking with Xers and millennials, and they loved this ad. This was pre-release before the Super Bowl. It was getting all kinds of accolades, really emotional. But my dad was not happy, and I was like, "Wow, I wonder what's going on there." So I immediately, after the Super Bowl was over, we had all the data. I went downstairs. There was a hot tub down there. I got in the hot tub with a bunch of millennials, and I started talking about ads. And they were saying, "Hey, I love that Google ad. I love that Google ad." And I was like, "Yeah, but my dad, he didn't love it." So we looked at the pre-post data of attitudes towards Google before and after exposure to that ad, and I split it by generation. Gen Z had a 13.8 lift in emotional appeal towards Google after watching that, Gen Z and millennials. Gen X, a 7-point lift in emotional appeal towards Google. But what happened with boomers? No lift. They didn't care. And so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, this is an anecdote with my dad, but now this is scientific evidence that this isn't resonating with boomers. And it made me wonder, if you don't know how people truly feel, how can you connect with them emotionally? And if you can't connect with people emotionally, how can you market to them effectively? So we went went a step further and we said, well, what is it that's making boomers not have that same reaction to Google after watching this ad? We got this little product, as Arianne was saying, that allows us to split moment by moment emotional data by change in non-conscious attitudes in the mind. So we took this data, and you can turn the volume up now, and we just split it by generation. And so let's take a look.
Hey Google, show me photos of me and Loretta. Remember? Loretta hated my mustache. Remember? Loretta loved going to Alaska and scallops. Show me photos from our anniversary. Remember, she always snorted when she laughed. Play our favorite movie. Remember, I'm the luckiest man in the world. Come on, boy.
I mean, it's right there, right? For the young group, there's that joy, right, of a life imagined, of experiences that you're going to create with your partner. For the older age group, it's the ache. It's the ache of the memories of a partner who has passed. This is quantified emotion, and I think it's beautiful. If you had that insight that this ad didn't lift emotional appeal towards your brand on your target audience, and you had this emotional trajectory of their experience while they were watching your ad, would you still launch that? If we can't connect with people emotionally, how can we market to them effectively? Empathy is the key to this. What we set out to achieve in the study that we're showing you today is to understand how different generations experience the last year and a half, the last 2 years emotionally. We didn't want to rely solely on self-reported data in a survey. How do you feel? We wanted to understand their implicit emotional response. So we examined specific emotional responses to concepts like work, money, climate change, politics, COVID-19, your future. We asked explicit questions, and then we measured it all implicitly. Anybody know what implicit measurement is in the room? If I'd asked that 10 years ago, no, but yeah, now we do. And we studied them systematically across generations. You can see we're going to refer to Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, Boomers, Boomers 2, Boomers 1, and those are the age groups that are falling into those groups. You could categorize them differently, but that is an accepted way. We pulled that, as you can see, from the footnote at the bottom. The design of the data that we're going to show you, the study period was from September 17th to the 21st, so we just collected this data. It was just a couple weeks ago. 1,750 total respondents, 350 per group, US general population. PureSpectrum ensured that this was representative of our population and that we filled all of our quotas. And we did it in 4 days. We tested implicit emotional appeal, and we tested using 7-point Likert scales, kind of industry standard, on attitudes of anxiety, concern, emotions towards each of those topics. Just as a quick review or preview of what Sentient Prime and implicit emotion is, this is the user interface here. You can see that it's on your mobile phone. It uses a priming and response time technique to prime respondents with a concept. In this case, it's 2022, the economy, my company, next year. Each of these are primes. They activate the non-conscious associations in your mind automatically, and those associations are irrepressible. They happen without your conscious control. And then they influence your behavior toward or away, whatever that object may be. Participants simply sort those emotions following a prime, so it's a true implicit exercise. I'm not saying, hey, tell me how you feel about 2020. I'm priming you with 2020 and then asking you to sort positive and negative emotions. If you're slower sorting positive emotions after I show you 2020, it means that you have an automatic negative emotional reaction to 2020. Does that make sense? I haven't asked you, just simply measured what your non-conscious biases are towards these primes. Positive associations are pulled towards you, so a natural approach and avoidance gesture embedded within an implicit association technology. That's how we measured each of these associations. It gives you, down to the millisecond response time, data on how fast people are making these judgments, and we also capture the velocity of the swipe. All of that we just want to boil down into a 0 to 200 index. Okay, so it's easy to interpret. 100 is neutral. Think of that as like a I neither agree nor disagree, kind of middle point of the scale. You know what I mean about that? By that, above 100 is an automatic positive association towards the concept in this study. Below 100 is an automatic negative association. And when I say automatic, I mean it happens in the minds of consumers, of humans, without their conscious control. Scores will go below 100, they reflect stronger associations with a negative concept. Above, they reflect stronger associations with the concepts that are near to you. So let's take a look at some of these results. I just, for these first three, just get a sense of what this data looks like. We're going to show you that data. The 100 in the middle is neutral, and we'll show you above and below. And the first concept we want to show you is social media. So in this data point, we're just flashing social media for half a second in front of all of the respondents, and we're measuring how they automatically feel about that concept. Sometimes implicit data gives you results that are intuitive, and here's a case for that. The automatic implicit association for Gen Z and millennials with social media is significantly positive and high. You probably would expect that going into it, right? You probably get that in a conscious question as well. Gen X, not quite as positive, but still significantly positive. To interpret this data, about 2.5 points above 100 is a significant difference, okay? But what's happening with the boomers? They're not automatically happy. In fact, they feel automatically negative at the simple flash of the word social media. Think about that for a second. Half a second, show social media, the word to boomer, and on average, you've activated negative associations in the mind of consumers. Gen Z has positive, boomers feel automatically negative after a mere half a second exposure to the phrase. Should we let that stand? If we're really about empathy, and that is happening every time boomers on average see or think about social media, that's cognitive trash, right? We don't want that in our minds. We don't want that activated all the time. If you had that insight and you were in social media, would you market to boomers differently? Maybe. But what about space exploration? Boomers love space exploration. And why? They're the generation that grew up with the moon landing, right? And that moment is forever cemented, etched on their minds, and that's how subconscious associations form. And the more emotional the moment, the stronger the association, the longer it lasts. Gen X, we're not impressed. As you're gonna see, we've got some other anxieties on our mind. So, how does that work? Space exploration. Positive response from boomers. Positive response from boomers. Negative response from Gen X. Gen Z, millennials, they're still waiting to see. See what that Tesla guy does. So this slide is just to show you that it really works. This is COVID-19, okay? So I flash COVID-19 at you. What happens? Negative across the board. Everybody hates COVID-19, right? All generations have a strong, immediate negative reaction to COVID-19. To give you a sense of how badly they feel, I just want to give you some markers for this scale. These were the associations with Donald Trump in Arizona the weekend before the election in November of 2020. I'm not trying to make an argument here. I just want to show you the scale. Republicans, when you show them Trump in November in Arizona, 118.9 towards Donald Trump. Independents, 90.1. So an automatic negative response among independents for Trump in November of 2021 in Arizona. And Democrats really didn't like Donald Trump, especially in Arizona. Just to make a note, if you had that data, how would you project Arizona would go? It was going to go blue, right? The conscious data doesn't differentiate like that. What else is in the mix here? Images of snakes getting 85. Bird song, audio primes gets 120. So you get a sense of how the scale works and what the normative range is on it. COVID-19, everybody hates it. Okay, so now that we believe the data, let's go on to stuff that maybe not quite as intuitive that we may not have discovered. Is that the first one? Fantastic. So we're just going to boil it down into three groups. We put Gen Z and millennials into one group, boomers and boomers two into another group, simplified a little bit, and Gen X there in the middle. We found this pattern. Gen X was really stressed, are really stressed. This was a week and a half ago. The implicit associations with the past, present, and future compared across these 3 years show this distinct pattern. So the prime here is 2020, 2021, 2022. You with me? And automatically, Gen Z, millennials, not great, no, not significantly above 100, but not negative. But they're very optimistic about next year, 2022. That's an automatic positive emotional response. That's great. Gen X took 2020 pretty hard. They're taking 2021 even harder. And they're not really that optimistic about 2022. There's an uncertainty within this generation. Now, this is a generation that bared a lot of the burden of young children at home during COVID. They're also in extremely stressful moments within their careers, trying to rise and get to that final point. And there's a lot of uncertainty around the economy for Gen X. Boomers, they were hurt in 2020. They were modestly positive in 2021, and they're very optimistic about 2022. This is a different emotional profile. All the generations are not experiencing this the same. If your target market is Gen X, understanding this anxiety is really important. That's the emotional connection that you need to make sure your brand is relevant in the moment for that audience. If you're talking to millennials and boomers about next year, lay on the optimism. Let's go hope. Let's go inspiration, right? It's consistent with their mindset about what next year is going to be. Gen X, we're not sure. I'm an Xer. My dad's a boomer. 3 major factors are influencing this anxious outlook for Xers. So here are the emotional responses to the economy, to politics, to climate change across generations. None of these things are positive for any of the audiences, but they're especially negative for Gen X, and 89.6 on politics. That's getting down into the range of snake images. Right? Well, what is it? This was a really interesting finding. Boomers are happy about 2022, but when we dug into concepts about work, income, jobs, their companies, we found a different pattern. Boomers feel worse about their jobs, see that, 100, than the younger generations. Gen X, 108.5. Gen Z and millennials, 104.6. Boomers, neutral. But they actually feel negative about their company, a 95.9. Their income, they're happy with their income. But we never would have discovered this if we had just relied on what they said. Remember, we asked the Likert square questions as well? How anxious are you about your job? This was a satisfaction question, actually. The mean response on a 7-point Likert scale of satisfaction with their jobs. If you had that data, you'd think everything was fine. Boomers are actually higher than everybody else in what they self-report, but they're supposed to be, right? They're supposed to be loyal to the company. Different generational values there. But how are they really feeling? They don't feel good. And it's not about the pay. It's about the company. They just entered into a world where they're about to get kicked aside, right, by the next generation coming up. So there's uncertainty about their job. They're used to working in person. Their whole company and all of the younger generations no longer want to work in person with them, but they're okay with their income. If you were a manager of a boomer, Would that influence how you would approach your management style across generations? I was talking to a friend of mine who is in charge of generational management and well-being across a large medical company, and this kind of insight allows that position to manage people according to where they are emotionally and what their emotional needs are. If you want to make boomers more satisfied with their jobs, it doesn't appear you need to offer more money. Everybody loves a raise, but it's something about their company experience that is causing this automatic negative reaction. What else would have been missed if we didn't have the implicit data? Well, here's one. I love this. This is implicit associations with my company and my income split by explicit job satisfaction. Everybody with me on this? So took the group that was a top 2 box in job satisfaction and the group that was bottom 5 box in job satisfaction and looked at their automatic emotional responses to these concepts. And we can see here that those who are in the top 2 box of job satisfaction have an automatic positive emotional response to their company, a 106.6. The bottom 5 have a negative emotional reaction to their company. That's interesting, right? But it's actually interesting because it's not about their income. The folks who are unsatisfied with a job actually have a positive emotional reaction to their income. So again, if you're a manager or if you're a business owner and you're trying to retain your talent, money is not the answer here. There's something different that people are looking for in their companies that we're not delivering. How about this one? This one was implicit associations with racial equality, forgive the typo there on my, implicit associations with racial equality and gender equality, split by explicit statements of whether you were concerned about these topics. How concerned are you about racial equality? 1 to 7. How concerned are you about gender equality? 1 to 7. We took those groups, split their attitudes. Here's the top 2 box who are concerned about racial equality. And there's the bottom 5 box who are concerned about racial equality. This is really interesting. Those people who are really concerned about racial equality, if I show you that word for half a second, you have an automatic positive emotional response. If you tell me you're not concerned about racial equality, shouldn't your attitude be neutral? It turns out that the people who self-report that they're not concerned about racial equality actually are concerned about it because they have a negative implicit emotional response. Would not have discovered that with just an explicit scale. Interestingly, and this is encouraging, the same pattern does not emerge on the gender equality question. This may point to progress. Really interesting. You see a pattern there, 109 to 104, but it's not in the negative direction. Even those people who say they're not concerned about gender equality have an automatic emotional positive response to gender equality. You with me? Racial equality and gender equality do not evoke the same emotions in the human population in the US. Wouldn't have discovered that without implicit. So what's really driving this? The single most important predictor of anxiety, conscious anxiety, over 2022 concern is the economy. Among those people who are concerned, top 2 box, their implicit emotional reaction, 93.1. Those who are not concerned are appropriately neutral. So when we think about what's driving anxieties, particularly for Xers, it's the economy. I won't fill that last place in. Okay. We're going to go into just a couple of summary points for you here, and Arianne's going to come back up on the stage. What are we learning? What can we learn from this? A lot. Well, what are we learning in this brief overview? This is just the teaser. The full report is going to have all of that data plus all of the crosscuts within it. If you're a researcher and are interested in digging into that data, we want you to have access to it. We want you to get in there and play with that data and reveal what generations are finding. If we put this data and these tools in the hands of the smartest researchers we have in the world, we're going to increase empathy. So what did we learn? Gen Z and millennials have cemented less negative associations with the past in their memories while also feeling implicit optimism about the future. Boomers were really hit hard by the pandemic. And they find themselves anxious about their economy and their job, their company and their job, but they're very optimistic and hopeful about next year. Gen X, they're bearing a big burden. and they are showing longer lasting emotional effects of the last year and a half on the elements that we tested.
Yeah, no, this is good. And I mean, I think when it comes down to it, there are differences in the I think the only way that this really works with the behavioral science is with the accuracy of the data, and that's what the PureSpectrum sentient relationship is about. So we'll leave you with some questions to consider. Read those. My questions are a little different too, but my questions are, what are the ways that each of us can actually listen better to what family, friends, colleagues, and our survey respondents are really feeling when they say, I'm fine, and how do we get to this next level of understanding? That's what I think drives innovation, and this is ultimately what creates our future. What do we want it to look like?
I love that. As we leave you with questions, think about this. How can we, Gen X, draw positive inspiration from millennials and boomers and Gen Z? How can employers better address the emotional needs of generation in their workforce? How can we produce marketing that makes an authentic emotional connection with one group without making another group feel badly? We don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be that way. How can we get more people excited about space exploration?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We have a few more minutes for questions, and you can get all of the results of this at bit.ly/generationstudy.